Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is in our Reengineering the Chess Classic series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we're continuing our look at the games of the great Italian player Sergio Mariotti. Well, we've seen some wins against some pretty amazing players and there's many more to come, but just having a little step out with a very bright and breezy little victory played in 1969 against the German player Georg Eppinger. And it's a very interesting little variation of the Najdorf Sicilian, or against the Najdorf Sicilian, and the finish is really nice as well. So let's have a look how that went. So this is e4 c5, knight f3 d6, d4 takes, knight f6, knight c3, a6, and then the Sozin. Bobby Fischer's favourite weapon against the Najdorf, and also used by Nigel Short in the 1993 World Championship match against Kasparov, with pretty good success, really. Should have led to at least a couple of wins. So after e6, now there's a lot of different possibilities. Actually, I've been experimenting a lot in blitz games with bishop e3, which is a crazy Leela idea, and one of these days I'm going to get down to putting together a video or two or three about that, because it's really interesting. Actually, Mariotti's idea is quite sort of in the same vein. It could actually transpose. He played the move queen e2. And yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, it's really keeping everything open. So, you know, white isn't committing to castling kingside. The king could move to the queen side. This dark squared bishop might go to e3, or as Mariotti chooses, go to g5. And there's always ideas like, you know, g4 to g5 and stuff like that. Just giving that pawn on e4 a bit of support as well. And yeah, you know, just carrying on with the development. It's pretty nice idea, actually. Very little played. So b5 played, and now bishop b3. And well, again, black's got a number of different choices here. Black played bishop b7. I was sort of assuming that this was a bit of a mistake. I mean, I always find it very risky to play this move bishop b7 this early, with the bishop on b3, knight on d4, pointing to e6. You know, you always get when you play something like bishop b7, you tend to think, well, you know, you're just asking for a sacrifice here. But the engines think that this is absolutely fine. I think the move that I would always look at first is the move b4. And the reason for that is that I've got stuck in my head that Bobby Fischer once said that when you can play b4 in the Najdorf, then you should always do it immediately. And the thing is that has sort of fed my my interpretation of the Najdorf, you know, essentially all my career. And I can't actually find where he said that. So maybe I just imagined it completely, and you know, all of my ideas and convictions are just based on something that he never ever said. But it is definitely a good disruptive move, you know, and playing it early gives black a lot of flexibility in developing, and also forces white to make, you know, a rather big choice. You're going to retreat, or are you going to put your knight out on a limb on a4? You know, so in general, it's quite a good idea. The engines quite like this as well. Bishop e7, castles, bishop d7. That's the place I normally want to put my bishop, you know, against this sort of system. Keep the bishop on d7, protecting e6, and prepare knight c6. And this is what the engines do here. This is you know, torch against stockfish, and it ends up being pretty even, basically. Pretty nice position for black. Plenty of other moves, but Eppinger played bishop b7, so let's take a look at that. Bishop g5. The engine's not keen on bishop g5. They just think that this bishop, that this combination of bishop g5 and bishop b3 is a bit loose somehow, you know, and they prefer the more compact bishop e3 in all these positions, you know, followed by castles, and then a3 to stop b4, and then f3, and well, you can play g4 later. Very interesting ideas. But bishop g5 was played by Mariotti, and Eppinger played h6, which I sort of assumed was a mistake because normally playing h6 is not so good because white plays the move bishop f6, queen f6, and then manages to get in f4 to f5 very quickly. But yeah, somehow the engines managed to find a way against this. So, I mean, you're attacking the knight on d4, so they were looking at playing rook d1 there, and after knight d7 castles to play this f4 to f5 idea. And then the engines were just playing g5 here. And actually, they were even playing a pawn sacrifice here. So a4, b4, knight a2, and then just sack the pawn and castle kingside. And what have you got here basically? Well, I mean, actually, yeah, you can understand that that black's got quite a nice position here. Two bishops, f4 is stopped. These knights are a little bit awkward. You're coming in with knight c5 to attack the pawn on e4, and yeah, just basically getting quite a nice position. Normally you play this bishop takes f6 because it sort of gains time, and the thing you really want to achieve is f4, f5. You see that a lot in the 6 bishop g5 Najdorf, that a too early h6 is not always good, but here it doesn't seem to make much difference. So h6 is pretty good, and the bishop retreats to h4. Actually, I think Stockfish even wanted to play bishop e3, which sort of shows you that it doesn't particularly like bishop g5 very much. The engines actually are still with me with the move b4. They want b4 to be played, but knight bd7 was played, and now after castles, it's getting a little bit tricky for black, a little bit fraught. You've got to be very, very careful here. And Eppinger's move queen a5 was actually not careful enough. Here Mariotti played the move rook e1, but astonishingly enough, the engines think now you might want to pause the video and see what you come up with, what you think the best move is, because the engines want to play something quite amazing, which is the move e5. E5 already. And this is really strong. 2.26 is the engine evaluation after this. So it's a really, really strong move. And well, I mean, these are the sort of things that make you, look at a system just a little bit differently. Of course, the engines say, oh, it's this bishop b3, bishop g5 combination, not so strong. But when these bolts from a clear sky, can hit the black position, you think, well, this might well be worth trying against a human opponent. What's the problem? Well, if you go knight takes e5, let's start with that. Then we just go f4. And, well, this is very, very powerful indeed. Knight ed7, you can imagine something nasty is going to happen. As always, of course, the way to exploit it is actually quite complicated. There's some quite subtle tactics in there. But, yeah, of course, if you've analysed this with an engine, then it's easy somehow. Knight e4. Is the strong idea. Pin on here, also threatening knight takes d6. So black takes off, and then queen takes e4. And quite a nice little idea. You've got rid of the light squared bishop, you're threatening queen a8, and you're also threatening knight c6 check. The only problem is that black plays rook a7 in this position, and then if you go knight c6, then we can just escape here, and well, we're attacking the queen on e4 afterwards, so you can't take the queen because I take this one. So black actually has to do it a little bit better, and it's actually quite subtle. Will take me a fair amount of time to calculate. Not necessarily calculate all the moves, but be sure that they're all working. So bishop f6, and actually even spotting the idea might be tricky. Knight f6, queen c6 check, king b8, and now the key is knight takes f8. And this actually just wins a pawn for white, and to start with, and then of course d6 is hanging as well, because after rook f8 we've got queen takes d6, forking the two. That is actually quite subtle tactics, it's quite linear, quite forcing, but yeah, not at all easy to spot. D takes e5 is met pretty much as you'd expect. Takes, and bishop e6, and then maybe the slight surprise is that it's so absolutely winning for white. Yeah, I mean, what's the idea? I mean, let's just have a look at the most obvious idea for black. Castle, get the king out of the way. Well, this is just child's play actually. It's going bishop f6, gf6, rook takes, rook d1, rook h7, and then this move queen d3. And this is the big problem. We are threatening both bishop takes d7 and also queen takes h7 as well. So if king b8, we go bishop takes d7, and we've got our traditional extra pawn here. And yeah, I mean, this bishop is coming back f5 to e4. We'll swap off the two bishops, and white will basically end up with a clear extra pawn there. I mean, I was looking at all sorts of ways because I was finding it sort of hard to believe that it was so good. I think, you know, the key problem is this slightly offside, you know, black queen, really. You know, that's really causing a problem. And there's also a very big threat in this position, which becomes most clear when you say, well, why don't I just go b4 then? Just get this queen a bit more involved, protecting this pawn. The key response to that is rook takes d7. Because after knight takes d7, we've just got queen h5 check, which is going to be made. This bishop on h4 really coming through there. And something like queen b6, which was another move I was looking at, for example, you just played bishop f6 again. And yeah, knight f6, I think there's queen takes e5 simply. I think that was the one. And if you go queen takes e6, then this move queen h5 check is again very awkward. You know, the king's stuck, this bishop again cutting across the black king like that. And if queen f7, we just play simply takes, and then rook takes d7, king f6, and rook takes b7. And pawn up, completely winning position there. So this e5 is really, really powerful. Must also be said that the move that I suggested to the engine, which I thought might be quite strong, f4, is also very good as well. I mean, you're coming through with e5, but e5, boom, this would have been really, really strong. So I'd say take a look at Mariotti's system. It's even more dangerous than it appears in this game, and Mariotti won this game in 20 moves. So rook e1 played here. And then it's getting a little bit fraught for black. I mean, castle queenside is, you know, has to be the move that you play. But I mean, you know, white stands quite nicely in this type of position. A3, king b8, and then f3. This is a nice move. Solidifies the e4 pawn. You've got no more pressure, and then you're just going to bring the bishop back and end up, you know, pointing towards the black king there. You know, you can do a nice little battery with a bishop on f2, queen on e3. The engines are winning quite a few games in this. You know, sort of win and draw alternating basically. So yeah, you know, I think white's just got a very nice position here indeed. You know, probably. You know, a clear advantage at least. Well, Eppinger took some pretty strong measures. Played g5, bishop g3, and then played the move rook c8. I mean, I think you really needed to play knight e5 in this position, for better or for worse, and just try and hold it that way. It's not that great. I mean, you know, it's you're definitely suffering a little bit. For example, one typical continuation here is king b1, rook c8, for example. You know, looking for something like rook takes c3, and then the engines are doing this nice idea: queen f3 here, bishop e7, and then knight takes e6, and just sort of worming their way into the black position with queen g6 coming in here. It's just really, really unpleasant. You know, it's it doesn't look that porous, the black position, but it definitely is. And the queen being stuck out on a5 definitely doesn't help either. I mean, you know, whatever you do, basically, there's a lot of knight takes e6s or bishop e6s happening here. So, I mean, black played rook c8 in this position, and, well, e5 was Mariotti's reply. And yeah, this is actually so bad for black. It's +5 is what the engines are suggesting there. So quite amazing. I've started giving these sort of numbers somehow. You know, I didn't used to do it before, but I do find it quite useful to know. You know, I've got my own opinion all the time about, you know, humanly speaking, how does this feel? How does this look? But it's also nice to give the objective, you know, the engine assessment for it, because yeah, they're not always the same, and sometimes it's interesting to know that, you know, to actually appreciate that. This does feel, you know, quite obviously good for white, this one. If you go d takes c5, we go bishop e5, and, you know, we're teeing up, right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening here, basically. So that's just going to be, you know, really, really strong. So Eppinger played rook takes c3, trying to break stuff up, trying to get some good squares for the knight to escape to. But Mariotti played e takes f6 here. And, well, I mean, what can you do with black? You've got to keep on going, right? So black played rook takes b3. And yeah, you're hoping for some sort of counterplay, some sort of queen checks somewhere. You could even, if something else happens, you could even do a desperado against g3 maybe. But Mariotti was not at all interested in the rook. I can stop the video here and you can have a guess of White's next move, but I'm pretty sure you'll get it, knowing that it's Mariotti playing with White. He played the move knight takes e6. Boom, plus 10. And we're threatening some sort of massive discovered check there. So black played f takes e6 here. Queen takes c6 check, king d8. And there's no need for anything complicated, just bishop takes d6. Clearing the d-file, this rook on b3 still hanging. I haven't seen anything like that before, I have to say. And we've got all sorts of threats. I mean, bishop f8 is a simple one. Bishop e7 check, queen e8 checkmate. They're all in there really. So bishop d6 pretty much the only move that black can reasonably play. And then rook takes d6, threatening mate on d7. And now, yeah, I mean, the best move the engines find is queen takes c1, which sort of says it all, really. But bishop c8 was played by Eppinger. Now, there's a couple of ways of playing. Mariotti played rook ed1, piling into to the d7 square, which was more than enough for black to throw in the towel. A move, for example, like queen c7 is just met by queen e7 checkmate. If you try and escape with king c7, I just take on here. And yeah, I can always take the rook on b3 at some stage if I want to up the amount of material I've got, or if I can't be particularly bothered to give mate somehow. So that's all really, really strong. The only thing the engine pointed out was maybe the even more aesthetic rook c6. I really like that one somehow. I'm not sure it's particularly stronger, but it does cut off the king and threaten to play queen e7. It's a very shogi sort of move. The idea that you don't keep on checking the opponent's king and letting it run. You cut it off and pin it back into a corner. That's because running in shogi with the king is actually very, very dangerous for you, because the way the shogi pieces move, which is only forwards, if the king manages to reach the opposing side, it's almost impossible to get at, as I've found out, and many other shogi players have found out to their trauma that the king that you were chasing has escaped by going to the other side. Less important in chess because our pieces can move backwards as well. This is a very nice move, I thought, very elegant as well, killing the c7 square and threatening queen e7 checkmate. But Mariotti's rook ed1 was super strong as well, and caused George Eppinger to resign. There we are, just a brisk and breezy game, but with a very nice opening system. I really would recommend taking a look at this game, and also maybe following up on my suggestion of bishop e3 as played by Crazy Leela. I'll try and get a video out on that sometime. But if you've got Crazy Leela going, just let it have a go at things. It's a really interesting system. Actually, Anish Giri covered it. I saw in his Najdorf course. He's pretty thorough, I have to say, this guy. But yeah, I mean, Crazy Leela finds some extra ideas, of course, that aren't in the course, as you'd expect. So yeah, definitely worth a try. I mean, what I like about bishop c4, just as following on this slight digression, is that it really more or less forces black to play e6, whereas against, other lines of the Najdorf, like bishop e3 first, you've got knight g4, you've got e6, you've got e5. You could even start playing Dragodorfs, with g6 or knight bd7. All sorts of things are possible. Whereas after bishop c4, not that much is possible, really. It's really e6 or not much else. Which makes it at any rate, in the initial stages, you're pretty sure that you're going to get what you want, which is very nice against something as broad as the Najdorf. But anyway, I hope you're enjoying this this series. Just like me, I mean, I knew one game of Mariotti's and hoped that you know, there were others that were just as good, and I just haven't been disappointed. So I'm going to keep on going with these, and hope that you'll keep on following me on that journey. If you like the videos, why not subscribe to the channel, give likes, take a look at my new books, Reengineering the Chess Classics, which is basically looking at classic games like this in this manner and using the engines to discover all sorts of amazing things like this 12e5. And otherwise, you know, thanks very much for watching and hope to see you at the next videos. Thanks for watching.